Hello, hello, hello. Before we get started, I wanted to clear up something really quickly. Um, ICU has a comment here, and it goes into what I want to talk about. So I'll put it up on the screen. It says, Marcus, quick question. When you say schizophrenic, are you literally talking about schizophrenia? And no. And that's the reason why last minute I changed the title. I realized that, especially having a friend who deals with this condition, that it was uh, not very thought out and it was insensitive. And so I wanted to change that. And first off, I wanted to apologize. I did not mean anything disrespectful or hurtful. I'm definitely sympathetic to anybody who's dealing with any kind of issues, no matter what they are. And them. I don't judge them negatively for what they're going through. And in fact, I honestly am inspired because I know how hard it can be to deal with some of these different issues. So I just want to say apologies for that. But let's go on ahead and get into the show. This is What I've Been Thinking with Marcus Cage. And today we have a very, very, very special episode because we have my co-host, L. Latham. How you doing, L? Don't take the vaccine. Don't take it. Papa, Papa. Don't take the vaccine. 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 Brother, brother, don't take the vaccine. Sister, sister, don't take the vaccine. Don't take the vaccine. Don't take the vaccine. Don't take the vaccine. Don't take the vaccine.
Hey, what's up?
Hey,
I'll try to do some
L.
intro music.
I like it. I
That's
like
my
it.
intro.
One of these days, I'm going to sit down and try to figure out an intro. I have one kind of pre-set up, sort of. I just changed the images depending on what the topics are going to be. But that's for my upload, so I got to figure out, you know, anybody who's actually tech savvy out there. And a couple of people told me that I need to reach out to Sleepy Josh. So I probably will do that. But if any of you other guys or gals, or him, they, whichever, how you identify. Um, Anybody out there who is tech savvy and willing to help out, reach out to me. So you guys know how to get in touch with me, Twitter, whatever, Facebook, all that stuff. My name is Marcus Cage. It should be that Mark. But tonight's show, Breaking Points, is breaking my nerves again. It's kind of interesting. Last time I did commentary on Breaking Points, my video got yanked down right after it. They said, "Oh well, what was it? Was it harmful medical tips or something like that?" Which I didn't give any medical tips. All I did was give actual statistics from the CDC. So I found that interesting. I think more than likely it was probably because maybe somebody got wind of that clip and they got a little sensitive. I happened to notice that one of the hosts on the show, their commentary, though it stayed still the same as it was before, it modified quite a bit, quite noticeably. I don't know, El, have you seen those clips yet of them talking about vaccinations and mandatory vax?
Yeah.
And what are some of your thoughts?
Well, I wanted to say just like today, literally today, like a few hours ago, Rand Paul's video was taken down for misinformation on YouTube. And I wonder if that's what they were dealing with a few hours ago when they had all these glitches. I always think whenever they have glitches on YouTube, then they're like censoring someone at that point, and they just fucked everything up. But
I mean, glitches in the Matrix.
it was like you could go to a channel, but you couldn't see their videos when you went to their video channel, like the video tab. And it was a few people who weren't even politically like relevant in that way that I went to their channel and I couldn't see their stuff. So it was kind of weird that happened on the same day that Rand Paul was censored or banned or whatever the thing was with his video, where he was like talking to people and telling them not to to use their natural immunity and was against the mandates and everything. So, that's what happened today. But, in relation to this, it's very related because it's somebody who has a not authoritarian view of things who's being told it's misinformation. It's now misinformation, to tell the truth.
Hold that thought one moment. Josh just hopped in. Josh wanted to stop by and say hello. Marcus Schiller, man. And because Josh is one of my friends, we talk off chat, and he was one of the friend who reached out to me and showed me kind of the errors of my way. So you can always learn something from all your friends. So always try to be humble enough to listen to them. He says, we're watching the Combo Couch debate in prop server. I wanted to bring that up because I understand some people are going to be over there and tied up with that, but please come back afterwards, check it out. Even if we're done, come back and watch this. You are going to want to know this information. I know it's entertaining to have, the back and forth fights, but sometimes we need this actual brain food and energy, the vegetables of what's going on, to understand what we're actually dealing with. So, sorry, I'll let you get back to that, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was kind of just relating everything together where it's like, if you have a certain point of view, your video will be fine. But if you have a different point of view, it might not be. And it just depends on whatever the CDC says, I guess, or what they don't say, or what the government thinks, not the government, Google thinks, Alphabet thinks about whatever. So you don't know which way they're going to go. They could strip your channel of videos anytime they want. And like Corbett Report today released a video called Trust the Science. And I went to it and it was like, oh, it's not available in Canada. I'm like, I'm not in Canada. I'm literally in Thailand on my VPN and you're telling me about Canada. So something stinks here and it isn't us. It's the truth that stinks to them and they don't like it. So they shut it down. And that was all in Invent 201 as well.
Well, while you were mentioning censorship overall, did you hear what recently happened with a lot of the neoliberals on Facebook?
No, I don't go to Facebook. So I don't know them. Don't know what's happening on Facebook or Instagram.
I mean, I'm on there, but I really don't actually know exactly what's going on myself. I try to stay out of the political stuff on there. I put my information up there and I leave it for people to take it as it will, read it, vet our information. If we are making sense, then keep on listening to us. If we're not making sense and you think we're loony, then hey, it's up to you what you do. So I leave that in other people's hands. But a lot of the neoliberal types, the very ones who support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, these same ones have gotten booted off of Facebook now. And so now the censorship is now finally, see, before it was hitting conservatives, it was hitting leftists, it was hitting the libertarians and independents. Now it's starting to knock on the door of the establishment a little bit. And so I wonder how this is going to wake some of these people up to some of the censorship.
Yeah. And then, I was on Twitter a little bit watching the reactions or looking at the reactions to the Cuomo thing, because Cuomo got dethroned, as I expected. And I said he would be ousted. So this is not a surprise. This is a power play. I don't know exactly what the lieutenant governor is going to do, but it ain't going to be any better than what he was doing. That's for sure. And we also have the investigation of the nursing home thing. Like, we don't know what's going to go on with that. And we might not know, because maybe he'll be out of the spotlight now and we'll never know what was going on with that case. So it's good for him in the end of it.
What this kind of reminds me of Spiro Agnew. What happened with Spiro Agnew is once they caught him with all of his bag money, literally, and all the bribes he'd been taking as vice president. For those who don't know who I'm talking about, he was the vice president of Nixon. Nixon had to resign from office for Whitewater and all that. No, what is it? I get those things mixed up. Whitewater, whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. The break-in at the Capitol. But anyway, what happened with Spiro Agnew is he got caught, and
Watergate.
instead of getting impeached, he decided to resign and avoid prison time because they were going to seek criminal charges on him also. And so he took that deal behind closed doors to just resign and kind of drifted off into the sunset. And I honestly think that this might be what we're looking at with Andrew Cuomo also.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
and if we see, I'm just saying, you guys, I mean, and I would rather YouTube just label me a crazy conspiracy theorist instead of, looking at me as news and then tearing my channel down or whatever, taking my videos down. Just label me as a conspiracy theorist. And then that way it clears all this up. You guys don't have to take me serious. But other people would.
They used to love. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
They used to love conspiracy theorists. They would pop them up all the time. Remember when Shane Dawson was doing all those conspiracy videos and they would put him at the top of the list of trending? What happened, YouTube? I thought we were like on the same page here. No, but that's all to do with like the whole initiative that getting rid of disinformation, medical disinformation, which was all part of Event 201 Segment 4, if you want to reference. Just watch that entire, I think, an hour or so clip. It's a very long special. It's a very long event, and it took place in New York on October 18, 2019, before the pandemic, and it was put on by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Johns Hopkins University Center for Health Security, which had done other previous exercises like Dark Winter back in 2000, and also not Crimson Contagion. It was another one. I already forgot the other one. Atlantic Storm, that one. And so if you want to know where all of this is coming from, just watch that. And George Gao will give you a little more information because he's the Chinese CDC director in that exercise, because he plays himself in it. Because everybody is played by like World Bank pieces of shit who want this to go as long as possible in real life, or now. And then he's just one of the people who's playing himself, and they ended up playing themselves really, but they think they're winning now, but they're really not. This misinformation is not going to be misinformation for very long, just like the lab leak theory went on to become not so much a theory as a possibility, a real possibility. The same thing will happen with these doctors and the ADE and all of that, antibody dependent enhancement and all of the things that we're not supposed to talk about. Spike proteins, all that shit.
Well, I mean, one thing which I wonder, is this even a safe question to ask? But I'm going to ask it anyway. Every single news report that I hear, for the most part, they talk about the cases. Yes. The amount of cases. But I never, hardly ever hear anything about death rates or deaths.
Because they're low in the U.S.
I'll hear one here or there, and it seems almost like, well, if you think about, we're a country of well over I would say easily 350 million, but I'll use the 330 million to be conservative. Out of that amount of people, you could always find somebody who died of COVID and had very terrible circumstances, whether it came on them all of a sudden or they had it twice and then it came back, whatever. But to get so emotionally attached to this one story and not keep into the totality of, everything that's going on there and the real true numbers, and then base that against history and other pandemics and events before. Just look at the pure data, and instead of just looking at it, like a lot of people will just look at infections, deaths, and that's it. You got to look at more information, especially when you're looking back at pandemics that happened years before. You've got to always take into account the population of the people at the time. Now, for instance, the population now in the U.S. is, let's say, from 7 billion to 8 billion. In time of the Spanish flu, the population was about 2 billion. Now, when you put those numbers up against the pandemic now, those numbers, it can give you a distorted understanding of what you're seeing there. Now, I guess before I get myself in trouble saying the next couple of statements, I will pass it back to Elle.
I'm not going to do any better, but
I know we're in trouble tonight.
Well, if you look at the graph on the worldometers.info coronavirus website, which I'll link here, I guess, you will see the daily deaths total for the United States. Yes, we are a big effing country. We're a huge country. We have 328 million that I remember in the population. And take that number and then you look at the cases, just forget about the cases because, as I've said before, which is true, which is not misinformation, PCR tests do not work the way that the government would like them to work or would like us to believe they work. They don't work as diagnostic tests in a real capacity, in real world, situations. And so taking that into consideration and taking also into consideration, because this is a graph, it shows from February 2020 until now, the peak seems to have been in January, according to this graph. And it was not even 5,000. So the peak is 5,000 or closer to 5,000. 4,430 seems to be the peak here for deaths, daily deaths. So considering that, and that being in January, look at today. So it is 657 as of August 10th. I don't know how they got that from today, because they usually give it a day until all the totals are figured out, but 657 is a whole lot less than 4,000. So I would say we're doing fairly well considering, and we don't even know how many have comorbidities, probably a lot, or are obese, which would be 78% of hospitalized people with COVID. It was a little bit lower a few days ago. So it was like 341 a couple of days ago, which is kind of crazy. So it's going up, but we don't know how many of those is fully vaccinated, because that's where we get into some weird numbers. Are we going to play the clip from the show, or are we just going to comment on it?
I was wondering, can you pull up the audio? Or I can go and grab my tablet.
On my phone, I can. It's not going to be very good.
Well, hold on then. I'll go grab my tablet.
Okay. Thank you for watching.
It's funny. We were both doing it at the same time. Our little do songs.
That's the go-to for awkward moments.
It is the jam.
My theme song. Super awkward funcast. You're not listening to the super awkward funcast now. Yeah.
That fit right at that time, definitely. Let's see. Breaking points. Because this commentary was so it literally reminded me of that John McCain, that little John McCain montage that they put together years ago. and it was literally John McCain against John McCain. And this clip literally reminded me of it. Hold on, let me find it.
They lately have been doing Fauci versus Fauci versus Fauci versus Fauci.
I mean, you definitely can.
There's so many contradictions. We live in a walking contradiction of a country. Everybody is a walking contradiction.
There we go. Let me make sure this volume's up. Can you hear that okay?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
This is pretty interesting. And this is something you and I have been debating off air that we wanted to kind of flesh out here. And I think both of us are a little bit like not totally clear on what our positions are. But the U.S. military just announced that they are going to require all servicemen and women to get the COVID vaccine by the fall. I think September 15th is the date. We can throw that tear sheet up on the screen showing that announcement. Yes, Pentagon will seek mandate for vaccination of all active duty military personnel by mid-September. And let me just set this up a little bit, and then we can talk about what we think about it. So Mark Milley, General Mark Milley, who's chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he sent out a letter arguing, most of his argument was that getting vaccinated against COVID-19 is a key force protection and readiness issue. Which I think makes sense, right? Saying basically like, look, we need our soldiers to be fit and for them to be well and not be stricken with this incredibly infectious disease. So yeah, we're going to add this to the list of inoculations that our service members must ultimately get. We've also got some numbers about how many of the active duty troops are already vaccinated. It's 70%. I think we have a tear sheet for this as well from, I think, Military Times. 70% of active duty troops have received at least one shot of a COVID-19 vaccine. That's actually way behind their original goal. They were hoping that the whole force would be vaccinated by mid-July. So they're at 70% with one dose. And I think the number is something like, so it's just below that.
About 50, right?
Yeah, it's about, I had the number here. Anyway, it's somewhere around 50% that have gotten both doses and are fully vaccinated. So
what was that?
You had the number right there. Where did it go? You had 70%, but you didn't have the number for that. Interesting.
Like, I think it's 50, maybe 50. I think Kyle says 50.
That's where things ultimately stand. The president, so they're at 70% with one dose. And I think the number is something like, so it's just below that.
About 50, right?
Yeah, it's about, I had the number here. Anyway, it's somewhere around 50% that have gotten both doses and are fully vaccinated. So that's where things ultimately stand. The president, of course, put out a statement in support of this decision and saying, echoing some of those arguments about how this is important, it's safe. We're going to add this to a list of required vaccinations, and that we are still on a wartime footing, it says, and every American who's eligible should take immediate steps to get vaccinated.
That's important. That's important to remember.
I'm like,
we're still on wartime footing.
I just want to ask people a question out there. Just put a question out there for the chat for them to think about. If COVID is ravaging, or Delta variant is ravaging, like the media is telling us, and it is getting horribly bad, why aren't we hearing anything about service members' deaths? Are the service members just exempt somehow? Because right there, they literally just said, let's say that it had any of the vaccination. That means 30% still have not had it. So none of these 30% are dying since it's a vaccination of the unvaxxed. Now, let's see what happens now that it's up to 70% for at least one vaccination, which we don't know if that means the Johnson where it's only one, or if it's one of the other ones where you need two. So
there's so much that they don't tell you.
Yes, there's so much that was not like drawn out and laid out in that whole thing. And part of it I can understand. Sometimes it is for segment, and they feel like, well, the experts have talked about this, so we don't have to go into it. But when
Lazy.
you just rely on the experts, you are not thinking thoroughly about what you're even saying.
Critically.
You're not critically thinking or weighing any of this information, and that's what it's showing you that they do. One example. Let's keep going.
Proud that our military women and men will continue to help lead the charge in the fight against the pandemic, as they often do by setting an example of keeping their fellow Americans safe. So, Pat Slinsky, what do you think of all of this?
So I actually am overall very split on it, but it's a weird kind of split, if I don't say so myself, because I feel like there's two separate questions that are going on here. One of the questions is, would this empirically have better outcomes? Would this lead to better outcomes?
Yeah.
On that point, I don't think this is arguable. I don't think this is debatable. I think.
But again, I wanted to bring up, have we been hearing about service members' deaths before a vaccination and after? I haven't been hearing this kind of massive surge of soldiers dying, or even a large percentage even being infected. So it brings me back to that question: why is this being forced? And people can say, "Well, it's not being forced. You have to get out of your military career ends if you won't take this." That to me is being forced.
Yes. Well, I have a little bit of data from the past that I would love to bring up from the last time this shit happened. The website I found it on is cidrap.umn.edu, and it concerns the GAO, or General Accounting Office of Congress, which found out that military anthrax shots caused many reactions, prompting some pilots to quit. This is dated November 8th, 2002, filed under anthrax, of course. And I'll put that in the chat here.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
To deny all the data and all the evidence in order to say the opposite.
Sorry.
I was going to say some shit about it. Just to read it off, like it's they had mandatory shots for anthrax, and it caused adverse reactions in most recipients and helped prompt many Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard members to transfer to other units or leave the military between 1998 and 2000, according to a survey from the GAO. So it says here that although the survey was conducted in 2000 before the terrorist and anthrax attacks of September and October 2001, and before the FDA approval, there's that fun fact again, of the manufacturing changes, the GAO believes the findings are still valid and useful as a measure of the vaccination program's performance, the report says. It was directed at a random sample of 1,253 Guard and Reserve personnel, chosen to represent all pilots and aircrew members, including vaccinated and unvaccinated personnel. The survey drew a 67% response rate. The percentage findings are said to be accurate within plus or minus 5 points. The survey showed that between September 1998 and September 2000, about 16% of the pilots and aircrew members of the Guard and Reserve had, one, transferred to another unit, primarily to non-flying positions to avoid or delay receiving the anthrax shots, two, moved to inactive status, or three, left the military. The report says, additionally, an estimated 1 in 5, 18% of those still participating in or assigned to a unit in 2000 is those who had not already changed their status, indicated their willingness to leave in the near future. Both groups, those who had already left and those indicating their intention to leave, ranked AVIP, Anthrax Vaccine Immunization Program, as a key factor in their decision to leave or change their participation. From the survey results, the GAO estimated that 37% of air crew personnel had received at least one anthrax shot of the 6-dose regimen by September 2000. 85% of the vaccinees, that's the first time I've seen that word, reported an adverse reaction, and each shot triggered an average of 4 or more reactions. Almost a fifth of the reactions were classified as systemic, and a fifth of these lasted more than a week. At the time of the survey, the vaccine product insert listed the rate of adverse reactions at about 30% and the rate of systemic reactions at 0.2%, the report says. Such marked vaccines from the product insert data suggest the possibility of a change in this composition of the vaccine from the vaccine originally approved in 1970, the report says. It does not discuss whether a newer vaccine from the renovated plant run by Bioport Corporation in Lansing, Michigan, might be safer than vaccine made before the renovation. And then it goes to say the DoD, when invited to comment on the draft GAO report, did not agree with the recommendation to establish an active surveillance program. The department cited a statement by the Institute of Medicine in its March 2002 report on the vaccine that special monitoring programs do not seem necessary despite the concerns of military personnel. But the GAO replied in the report that the IOM, what is the IOM? I don't know what the IOM is. They probably said it before, but I don't remember. Anyway, IOM, whatever the fuck that is, actually recommended that, Institute of Medicine, hello, recommended that DoD use VAERS data, that's coming soon, I'm going to mention that again, to generate hypotheses for further study and also do ad hoc unit-based population monitoring of reactions to all vaccines. DoD also commented that the rates of pilot separations from the military were similar before and after the beginning of the anthrax vaccination program in 1998. Further, the Pentagon said the report did not compare air crew turnover rates seen in the survey with the normal or expected rates. But the GAO said military officials did not supply data to support the claim that pilot separation rates stayed the same after the vaccine program started. In addition, the survey dealt with all changes of status, a broader category than separations, the report says. Although the separation rates may have been the same before and after the advent of the vaccine program, it is clear that the losses among the most experienced pilots in bases where AVIP was implemented, resulting from change of status, were significant at some bases, resulting in the loss of an extremely seasoned workforce, the report concludes. I state my case.
Well, Quaker Socialist asked, commented, anthrax seems very different than COVID. I feel anthrax is more experiments and risk versus COVID and community-wide and more flu-like protocols. Well, what Elle was illustrating was how the military reacted to being forced to have to be vaccinated. And so it was, actually, let me clarify that, of being forced to be vaccinated on something that was not already authorized by the FDA or already finalized and
not
approved.
had enough trials.
Yes, not in trial. I mean, this is something which was still going through trials. It was experimental. The same thing with all of the vaccinations right now. They have emergency authorization, which is not the same as FDA approval, which is the same kind of situation as what we're talking about. I was in the military, and yes, you do take a lot of vaccinations and shots. But the difference is, and Kyle will say it in here later, but he says, well, what's the difference with just one more shot? Well, the difference is it's not just one more shot. Most of these other shots that we've taken have years and years of data on the side effects, on all kind of things to know about these things. They've done multiple clinical trials. This, on the other hand, we don't have. For one, anybody who tells you that they know that, oh, it's perfectly safe. How can you know what's going to happen to somebody 5, 10, 15 years down the line, if we don't have any trials of anybody who's had it or used any of these vaccinations for 5, 10, 15 years down the line. A lot of times, whenever you have some kind of adverse reaction to any kind of a medication or chemical, I'll just say chemical instead of, because in the military, you can be exposed to, like, I know a lot of people were exposed to asbestos and a bunch of different things like that while they're in the military. And so what I'm saying is you can be exposed to a chemical and it doesn't affect you right away. It can affect you years down the line when you start having liver problems, when you start having kidney issues, when you start having, for instance, I spend a lot of time around different types of warheads and stuff. And some of these warheads have like gyroscopes and stuff, which are creating magnetic fields. Those types of things have been shown that it can cause you to be sterile. It's not a guarantee, but it can lead to that. So just because you experience something, it doesn't hurt you right away. It doesn't mean that we do not know what's going to happen later. It could be perfectly fine. Nothing happens, but we don't know. That's what I'm saying. Let's see. Said, yes, I still think anthrax is still more of a chemical warfare. Yes, it was, but it was taking a vaccination against anthrax. That's what it was for, to prevent from side effects from anthrax. And so they were worried about an external threat to the body, and they were giving you a vaccination to protect from that external threat. So that's where the comparison between the two comes in. Not saying they're exactly the same. COVID.
Also, anthrax was released by someone within the government. That was found out. Like, that's not a conspiracy theory. It was not a terrorist event, as it turns out.
Quaker says, I agree that the entire political farce of the COVID rollout destroyed public health approach. I quit my public health affiliation due to their failure to protest the rollout. Well, here's one thing which I want to say, which kind of offends me, being multiple, I guess, multiple minority groups. A lot of times, especially of the so-called Black or African American community, they always bring up Tuskegee. Like, that's the only thing we know. Like, we're not educated enough or can't be educated enough to know about other things that have happened in history, or to know about other things which this United States government has sanctioned to allow also with other people groups. My Native American ancestry, we know about the stuff which has happened there, and throughout every different group which has come in, whether it be for against a minority group, whether it be against Quakers or whoever it might be, a new smaller nation which the United States is conquering. All of these types of things are not new. It's just a lot of them aren't as well known to a lot of people. And I could sit here and name you event after event after event, which is documented, historical, which you can look up, which has happened within like the last 50 years, a lot of this stuff. I mean, I can give you events over the last 100 years where you'd be like, okay, I guess I could see your point in being a little skeptical. But the mentality that, oh, Black people only know about Tulsa. I know about in Puerto Rico during the same time when they were sterilizing women. I know about the United States, which was funding Israel while Israel was sterilizing Ethiopian women coming in there. I know about there's many things which the United States has done. Some of the stuff which they did with the so-called Indian boarding schools, and that's okay. I'm gonna get off topic, but there's multiple reasons to have skepticism. So let's get back to this.
It would be phenomenal for whoever is under a mandatory vaccine, because again, I don't, to even run through this at this point seems silly, but apparently we have to. In the original trials for all the vaccines, whether it's Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, the one that was overseas from the UK, in the trials for all of them, Not a single person was hospitalized or died from COVID. Not a single person.
And how many people are in those trials? Most of the time, those trials are very small. They don't tell you that, though.
No.
And obviously, by the way, there's a lot of BS on this.
Oh, do you want to say something?
I agreed. We don't know all of the details of those trials either, and I would implore him to give us some of the results on air if he wants to get into that.
I mean, you can easily say through these couple of trials that they didn't have any hospitalizations, but do we know what do we know who the people who were involved in this sample group were? Were they a mix of different age groups and different nationalities and things like that, men and women?
They didn't have disabled people, right? Like they didn't have people with certain problems.
Were these people who were all coming in more than likely very fit and kind of healthy and not immunocompromised, or was this just an actual random sample? Those things have to be asked also. But yeah, I'll get back to this while Kyle goes on his why everybody is so dumb for not seeing that the government, they definitely should be trusted this time.
Yeah, this time
they say like, oh, this one's only 66% effective. That number is complete horseshit, because the numbers that really matter are you protected against hospitalization, severe illness, and death? And when you look at those numbers, every vaccine is over 95%.
Yes.
So when they say 66%, that just means 66% to keep you from getting COVID. But a lot of those people who get COVID after they have the vaccine, they have like the sniffles or they're asymptomatic. And so they count that against the vaccine, which I think is psychotic.
And do you know why they get the sniffles after they get the vaccine? Who out there has gotten a flu shot? What happens when you get a flu shot? Would you like to educate them, Elle? What happens when you get a flu shot?
I do not know. I've never gotten it.
I can tell you what happens. They actually inject an antibody part of the flu virus itself to make your immune system have to kick into gear and deal with it. And so they help you by making you sick. That's how a flu virus is done. That is factual. I'm not saying that is exactly how the COVID viruses or vaccines are manufactured. Just want to clarify the two. But that is how a flu vaccination is made. And that's the kind of how it works in a sense. It's to get you a little sick. So if people are getting the sniffles right after the vaccination, and remember what I just said about the flu, is there a possibility? I'll leave it at that.
Obviously, the vaccine is working if you have the sniffles after you get the vaccine, when otherwise maybe you would have been moderately sick. Maybe you would have been hospitalized. Who knows?
Right.
So I think the data is over.
See, I'm sorry I had to stop it so quick, but that's another issue I have. Before the vaccination came out, did we not have people who were like getting it, dying instantly? People who perfectly asymptomatic. We had people who were a little bit sick. We had people of all varying degrees before the vaccination came out. So how can you calculate on this individual person how different the results would have been with them getting the vaccination or not? I don't even understand how you could calculate that. I mean, can you figure out how they could calculate that, Elle?
No.
I mean, to be able to tell you really would have been this much worse if you didn't have it. How do you know? But, I just ask little simple questions here and there while they speak with their big brains, I guess, and because they have their degrees and have all their subscribers, we'll just listen to them and just, act as if they know what the hell they're really talking about. Because it shows you that they're not even questioning what the hell is even coming out of their own mouths. Because that's the reason why they're in such contradiction when they start going back and forth on, well, I guess I understand this, but I don't understand that, because they know that the standpoints which they're pushing go against what they say they believe in. And so now they find themselves in a tricky spot, and they're trying to figure out how to balance the two. To me, I don't think they did it, but I'll leave that to you all to decide.
We know that it was literally 100% of people who died in Maryland 2 months ago were unvaccinated. So this really is a pandemic of the unvaccinated at this point.
No, it's not.
You want to jump in?
You liar. You fucking liar. I have data right here. This is Washington specifically. And it's every state. Like, there's like a really shitty New York Times article that I can't really like look at to like judge the graph, but they have like a graph where it shows the different states and how many are unvaccinated, how many are vaccinated. But you look at them individually and you'll see that the numbers are a lot different than what the hell they're saying. And you also have to keep in mind that fully vaccinated means, or not fully vaccinated. Not fully vaccinated means you don't have both doses, but you have at least one. So this is not a pandemic of the unvaccinated either, because it's people who haven't gotten their whole treatment yet, if you want to call it a treatment, whatever. But they haven't been through that process yet. That doesn't mean that they're horrible people, that they got the thing and they probably got sick or whatever, and then didn't want to get it again. I wouldn't want to get it again if I ended up in the hospital. Now would you? Now would you? I wouldn't. So that, take into consideration those facts. And also the fact that in Washington, as of yesterday, where's that article that I had? Oh, there it is. It's really cute. How many COVID-19 vaccines has Washington administered? It's 64% as of the 9th. This article specifically is from 12 days ago. I won't be wrong about that. But it says here that 12 days ago, the DOH analyzed data from the Washington Disease Reporting System and Washington Immunization Information System, comparing who was getting sick versus who was vaccinated by looking at cases between February and June 2021. So now we have like dates. We don't have new data yet because we're waiting for all of that to come in, but we have old data here. And it says the DOH found that 97.4% of COVID-19 patients were not fully vaccinated, while 96% of COVID-19 hospitalizations were in those not fully vaccinated, and 94.3% of COVID-19 related deaths were in patients who were not fully vaccinated. That ain't 99%. This is a number that they keep trotting out. That's from before, I guess. And they don't have any new data to back it up. They just say this shit, and it's not really even 100% true. But it's a thing that they saw in the media, so they can repeat it. It's fine to repeat this number and call it a pandemic of the unvaccinated without realizing that 94% is worse than 99%, which is most people contracting COVID, recovering from it. 99% recover from COVID. Less than 1% die from COVID. And even then, it's with comorbidities. So get off your high horse, Kyle. You don't know anything. Sorry. That really pissed me off hearing the presidential phrase. That stupid ass phrase. Oh shit. I can't hear you anymore.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. Quaker says, my oncologist, the lead MD of my research team, told us all today that COVID is raging and vaccinated are equally at risk. So use the Swiss cheese strategy: mask, wash hands, distance, and personal health.
Well, definitely wear a mask in the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, of course, if you're in a high risk area, I mean, I don't think it's silly to be careful. I mean, none of us really, I mean, I guess I want to put this out there. We do believe COVID is real, but yes. It's just that, and so therefore you shouldn't you know, for instance, I wouldn't decide to go to Vegas and go hang out at a nightclub. That wouldn't be me. I wouldn't be going to, like, I know a lot of people were going and doing this and doing that, but I'm still keeping to, you know, my small groups of people who I'm normally around. Definitely washing my hands, trying to keep my distance.
Who wasn't doing that before, by the way? Like, remember when they were telling everybody to wash their hands in the very beginning? That was the best part. It was like, oh, the government's telling me to wash my hands. I guess I got to do that, even though I've been doing that the entire time, and also doing that before I like leave my office and before I like, and then I get Purell when I come in. Before this shit happened, I would do that.
Well,
So,
you gotta
like,
you gotta remember, we still are living in a society full of a lot of filthy.
We live in a society, right?
We live in a society full of filthy ass people. I literally watch guys come into my building all the time. Immune system, though. I watch guys come in our building all the time. I go in to go use the restroom. I know if they just took the nastiest dump ever. It smells horrible in there. I see guys walk out, don't even have toilet paper in there. And I know there wasn't toilet paper. They go in there, just get up and walk right out. I'm like, this guy didn't even wipe his butt. And he's not going to wash his hands. Watch. Nope, there he goes, right past the sink.
But I feel like
this guy's gonna go in and try to go and get some coffee or something.
Let's look at the homeless population. Hasn't it kind of soared since all this happened? Like, how are the homeless surviving this deadly pandemic that they pretend is real? Like, that it's a pandemic level of a disease, not the flu, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that, Quaker. Quaker says there's also disability caused by COVID. This is my critical point. My soccer star son, who's 20, along with all of us in the family, now has heart arrhythmia. My soldier son has lung scars worsening his asthma, which I do know of. I mean, that's why I tell people I'm not some kind of COVID denier here. I do know it's real. My only issue has been with the validity of the actual numbers. Now, do I know people who have definitely had COVID and been really sick from it? Yes. Do I know people who have died from it? Yes, I do. And was some of them, in my opinion, COVID? Definitely. But a couple of them had some other issues which make me question on those. But I do not deny that COVID, if you get a really bad case of it, it can jack you up, and not just for that time period. I mean, it can, affect you for the rest of your life. So I'm sorry to hear that, but and then that's why I try to tell people I'm not somebody who's trying to tell people, hey, don't worry about COVID at all. You still need to take your precautions. I do not advise a lot of big group gatherings. I still don't really go out much, which I'm kind of a homebody anyway, so that works out easier for me. But still try to take, some of this caution and not just be ready to just run back to how things were before. And, keep some of the, even, let's say they say the pandemic is over tomorrow. They figured it out perfectly. Even then, hold on to some of these hand washing, some of this cleanliness. If you are out there taking different vitamins, whether it's taking some more vitamin D or zinc, or whether you're taking, multivitamins or vitamin C, or just stuff for immune boosters, or if you're very, green and you understand, different, botany very well, and which kind of plants are going to help boost your immune system naturally. Or you're into some of the forgetting the word right now, but kind of more natural herbs and settings, whatever. What was that?
Homeopathic?
Yes, homeopathic. And so if that's more your angle, I believe all of those things together are very, very powerful. And I'm not saying that you should just never go to a hospital again after doing that. No, I'm not. And I feel like I have to clarify these things because I find that a lot of times when I have conversations with people, people often fill in the blanks to what they think that you're alluding to, whether it's what you're alluding to or not. And so I've tried to be a little bit more careful parsing my words so that they cannot be used to be misconstrued, because I believe that's exactly the game which I'm dealing with a lot of the censorship I've been dealing with here on this platform.
I agree.
Okay. Let's get to a little bit more of this. Wow, I didn't realize it was this long. But hey, I'm not in a rush.
I'm not saying you will, but people who are listening, you could try to disagree or try to debate. You're just wrong. The data is overwhelming. So empirically, whoever does a mandatory vaccine, it would have better health outcomes. So my issue is not with that.
Bullshit.
Where questions arise in my mind is here. There's a problem with the principle of mandating the vaccine, because our institutions are phenomenally disliked and untrusted. And you know what? They fucking earned that.
Yep.
They earned it.
Yep.
Whether it's all like the illegal Iraq war that we were lied into, or Fauci early on basically lying, saying masks don't work. And then it's like, well, when I said that, what I really meant was I don't want people to go out and buy them now because we need them for the frontline workers. Okay, so you fucking lied. You're admitting that you fucking lied. And so people don't like our institutions for good reason. So for them to say,
and Fauci being caught lying on the gain of function research.
These same assholes who've been lying to me all along are now going to tell me to do some shit for my own well-being and force something into my body? Hell the fuck no. And so I hear that and I'm like...
And so he hears that. But he still has the position that the forced vaccination will be better for you. Even though he just said he understands about the government is... Let me just back that up. Let's play that again.
Yeah, you got a point. People to go out and buy them now because we need them for the frontline workers. Okay, so you fucking lied. You're admitting that you fucking lied. And so people don't like our institutions for good reason. So for them to say, these same assholes who've been lying to me all along are now going to tell me to do some shit for my own well-being and force something into my body? Hell the fuck no. And so I hear that and I'm like, yeah, you got a point. Now, this just so happens to be an instance where it's like, yeah, I know they've been wrong 1,000 times, and I know you shouldn't trust them, and you shouldn't, and you should be skeptical. But this is a rare instance where they're actually 100% correct that this would help you, so you should probably go get vaccinated.
That's called cognitive dissonance, Kyle. That's what that's called.
He literally just... And here's the thing. I ask people, how did the United States even become a nation? By theft.
Yeah.
Literally by stealing and lying. That's how it became a nation.
That's the American...
every bit of it. From the original 13 colonies to all the way the expansion all the way west, and adding Hawaii, and even all the various Commonwealth territories of the United States. Pretty much all came from theft. Now, a nation which is built on theft, and most of our leaders and powerful people have been built on that same wealth, from stealing, lying, cheating, enslaving, all of that. Now they sit on the top, and they have been caught over and over and over and over and over again, lying to us on the hugest things. We literally just had, what was it? Johnson & Johnson in recent years has paid a giant fine for lying, hiding information, bribery, a bunch of different things like that.
Of doctors.
The same thing with Pfizer. They just paid a large, giant one. And if I'm not mistaken, was it Moderna also? Not Moderna.
No, Moderna's too new, but they had some trouble in 2017 getting a vaccine off the ground. So now they had an opportunity with COVID, so they took it.
Yeah, but the other one too. Who am I forgetting?
Oh,
Johnson & Johnson.
AstraZeneca.
Pfizer,
they also have the same issues.
Yes.
And all are part of the opioid crisis, but let's just trust
all
them.
of these same ones, which we all, maybe a year ago, before the pandemic, literally right before the pandemic, we were all talking about how these people were responsible for the opioid epidemic all across this country. There's documentaries all about how their salesmen lie, manipulate, and this has been their modus operandi. This has been how they do business. Now, as soon as the pandemic hits, well, I know they've been wrong and lying to us all this time, but this time they're 100% correct. That's what Kyle tells you. This time they're 100% correct. Really, Kyle? 100% correct.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. Really? You really said that with a straight face? After you just admitted that they've lied on like 99.99999 of damn near everything they say and do. But
and
yes,
the government
trust them now.
has actually implemented biological warfare in the 70s in San Francisco. So like there are samples of the government being very untrustworthy on this specific thing.
Well, the whole LSD craze and stuff like that, that was all started by government-funded research to test LSD on people for the MK Ultra program, which is not a myth. I don't know if it works or whatever, but there's actual documents, notes about the actual program that went on when they were doing all of this testing. This is something which was government-funded research.
And Operation Paperclip, where they got the Nazi scientists to help build rockets. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine.
Oh,
totally kosher.
Yeah, let's get back to more of Kyle's great wisdom and logic.
He's so smart.
That's why I struggle with it, because empirically it would work, but in principle, I really do have an issue with it. So right now, and I'm loose on this position, but right now I do feel like the best path is sort of this middle path that we're already on, where it's like the government is not mandating everybody get a vaccine.
Yeah.
Right. But you do have these different institutions in society. So like maybe the business you work for says, hey, in order to work here, you have to have it, or in order to work in the office, you have to have it. When you put your kids in school, they have mandatory vaccines. In order to go to the school, you have to get the vaccine. Now that you still have the option, I'm a homeschooler, I don't want them getting the vaccine. Okay, fair enough. So you have a way out
about it. So
like that's just like a fair option, right? So you know what? And here's the thing. Kyle's thinking from somebody who's like 30 years old, maybe a young professional who has a bachelor's. They could just, maybe I could just pick up and do something else. What happens if you're a factory worker? Or if you were in the military? That's all you got. You got kids, you got mortgages, you got all that. Now you have to just jump right out.
Or you're in healthcare.
A lot of people don't understand the military. The healthcare which you get for free is amazing. And amazing for your family. And so you might not be making as much cash, but the perks which you're getting in the military are extremely difficult to just translate right to once you get out. That's the reason why a lot of service members have trouble readjusting to the civilian world once they get out, because it's a lot more, I don't give a fuck about you, than the military was. The military has a lot of things set up for you that saves you from spending a lot of money out of your own pocket. For instance, you have BAH, BAQ, you have what that is, like housing allowance. They pay you money living in certain cities to be able to pay for your rent outside of your pay. Also, there's a food allowance. Also, if you have a child or you're married, you get a dependent allowance. These are things which aren't always talked about. So when you force somebody who's been in, say, 10 years, 12 years to just make a choice, you're making them, that's a lot. Somebody said, well, that's not mandatory, or you could just go and do this, or you can just go and do that. I mean, it's not that simple. And Kyle knows it's not that simple. So, I mean, the fact that he tries to just play it off and say, well, I kind of like this middle approach. Yeah, you like the middle approach because what you figured out is, well, I support mandatory vax, but I know my position says I'm supposed to be against any encroachment on the First Amendment, or not the First Amendment, but what am I thinking of? Freedom of was it truth, liberty, freedom of happiness, whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. But liberty. Talking about like the liberty, like your own free liberty. And if you're a person who is big on a person having their independent freedom and their, to be able to self-determine themselves. Oh, that's what I was thinking. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Well, if you're going to force somebody out of a career field with no backup all of a sudden, aren't you kind of taking away their happiness? I don't know. What do you think, though?
Also, it's like part of the whole automation agenda is to get everyone to leave their job. I mean, this would be a good way to do it, to implement that agenda, is to get people to leave jobs that a robot could possibly do. And then they can, digitize the pass or whatever, like the health pass or whatever. And that's why it's called that, is because biometrically, it's a biometric ID. It doesn't have to be attached to the vaccine. They are using the vaccine mandate to implement tools that they've already created to see how our body's doing, like day to day, and just encroach on our lives in that way, in a very digital way. And part of the transhumanist kind of thing that they're doing, making us more like machines than people, and checking in on us. And if you have a reading on your bracelet or whatever, not necessarily a chip, but something attached to you, something that you keep on you, a wearable of some sort, at first, then you can't go to work that day, and then you have to stay home. You can't go here, you can't go there. And it's just trying to encroach on people's lives in that way, where it's like the government is literally in control of your body, which is why I never supported the loss of freedom of movement in other countries where people are not allowed to leave their house. That's insane to me. Go 3 miles away. That's not normal. This is not we should not be normalizing this encroachment on our rights. We should be taking our rights back. We should be out there sharing information and telling everybody that this is not right. And Kyle should be doing that too, but he's not Big Seltzer anymore. He's Big Pharma. So
Kyle's worried about making that check. That's what I think. Kyle is looking a little bit more Hollywood and Hollywood by the day, or more, I guess, Wall Street or Broadway by the day. He's looking. I mean, it's kind of like AOC. When I look at her, she literally physically looks different. Like, how you see somebody when they first start out, and then after they've been in Hollywood a couple of years, how different they look. That's how AOC looks to me. How everything looks all polished. You could tell like they have all these kind of staff around them that always try to make them look perfect every moment. That you never hear them hardly saying anything, uncouth.
Stop
they're
being a
always
negative
completely
Nancy.
regulated. What was that?
You're being a negative Nancy. Stop being a negative Nancy.
And it's ironic she would bring up her mama bear, Nancy.
Yeah.
That's the negative Nancy that we're speaking of. Jess here says, Jesse says, I also noticed the timing of people pissed at pharma wanting to control pricing. Medicare for all talk, pharma, bro, hate. Then suddenly, instead of price regulation, government now touting pharma as the savior.
Yeah, we don't hear about that anymore.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
it doesn't matter.
I mean, not that long ago, I'm pretty sure most of us who have been doing some kind of content can go back, and we probably have a video during the primaries where some candidate is talking about big pharma.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say any names, but now trust everything, right? Trust it all. No problem.
Yeah, Trump was saying shit about big pharma back in the day, like you pay too much for drugs. He was trying to tout his bill. He was like, I lowered the prices and blah blah blah. So he was even a part of that, and then he ended up being taken for a ride with the Operation Warp Speed. They're all a part of it.
See, we heard Kyle's stance. He wants to do mandatory, but what he wants to do is he wants to force your hand. And so he wants to put you in a rock and a hard place. And then say, hey, bro, I'm sorry. I didn't do it. Hey, it's on you. You know how he does his little silly little voice? That's what he wants to do. He wants to leave you in a rock and a hard place and then make you choose. And then whatever happens, that's on you. Even though people like Kyle are the one who are forcing you into this, by continuously using their platforms to push this narrative.
Yes, and they started with the masks, and now it's vaccine. They just changed it. It was mask mandates, and now they're doing vaccine mandates, which we weren't even hearing before. You were hearing passports, but now they're like, no, we're going back to mandates. That's what it is.
Passports are coming back. Trust me, that's coming back around.
No, they are, but like I'm saying, like now the conversation has changed, and then it will change again for the biometric pass or whatever, like that they implement here like they did in the UK and France.
Let's see what Krystal has to say on this.
I believe in communitarian principles. I believe in responsibility not only for yourself but your community and taking care of those around you, and that we exist together in a society, and that comes with certain rights and certain responsibilities. So I believe that. On the other hand, I also get very nervous. And I get nervous not just about a government mandate about what you have to put into your body, and what sort of medical care and information they're going to claim and force upon you.
Oh, yeah. That's right. I saw this before. So listen to what she says here and just keep it just right there, nice and tight real quick. I'm going to back it up a little. Shit. Let me get it back about the right spot. I think that's good.
Fringe libertarian who thinks you're only responsible for yourself and you have no responsibility to...
Weak mandate where there's a million ways out of it. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I think that both of us feel like we have a couple of principles that we hold that are in competition on this. Because
definitely.
I do think I'm not some fringe libertarian who thinks you're only responsible for yourself and you have no responsibility to anyone else. I believe in, communitarian principles. I believe in responsibility not only for yourself, but your community and taking care of those around you, and that we exist together in a society, and that comes with certain rights and certain responsibilities. So I believe that. On the other hand, I also get very nervous. And I get nervous not just about a government mandate about what you have to put into your body, and what sort of medical care and information they're going to claim and force upon you. But I also get equally probably nervous about corporations taking that stance and empowering, like your HR department is now going to be dictating to you what you need to do medically. I don't really like that either. So I also feel kind of like I have these principles that are butting up against each other on these individual things. And so I think I've looked at this on sort of a case-by-case basis rather than a blanket view one way or the other, like yes to vaccine mandates or no to vaccine mandates. I'll say specifically with regards to the military, for me, this one is pretty clear, because if you voluntarily decided to join the U.S. military, you have already said, like, basically, I'm giving my body the U.S. federal government. And you have, you're there with your brothers and sisters.
So to Krystal, that means when you give your body, when you sign up to the military, that means you don't have rights anymore, basically. That's what that sounded like to me.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the respect for the military she has. Well, screw your rights. Whatever, you signed up, you're fucked now.
And I feel like they
keep that in mind. And remember what she said before about freedom and all this, and right to determine your own body. I guarantee you, if this had to do with abortion or something like this, her tone would be very different.
Very different. I feel like that's why they're going after the military first, and also the healthcare workers, because they're easy to say, well, that's them. That's not going to be me, As long as it's them, I'm okay with that. And then they'll just keep creeping up with the other people and creeping it in to society. That's how it starts. Again, it starts incrementally. They don't do anything all at once because they know people are going to be like, what the fuck? What's happening? I know I can't do this. I can't do that. They do it incrementally. And then they get you addicted to the power over you. And they get you, where you're helpless. you're a victim forever, and you can just be like, okay, govern me harder, daddy. Basically.
Oh, Quaker just laid a couple of solid quotes that I wanted to read out. It says communitarianism has a bad rap on how and who applies it. It is not mutualism. It is not anarchism. It can be forced from the oligarchs. Minorities and dissidents can be harmed by communitarianism. See, that's what I try to bring across to people. Everybody argues, oh, well, it's capitalism. Oh, it's socialism. Oh, it's not about the isms. It's about who's at the top. That's what's most important always. Any leader can run any system horribly. So thinking that, oh, well, if you just get the right system. The problem is the assholes at the top of the system. And regardless of if most of you understand it or not, is these are the same damn people over and over and over, just passing this down through generation and keeping this shit going, whether it's through monarchies, whether it's through various different government, states, colonies, or whatever. These are the same damn people who've been in charge this whole time. And they are the problem. It's not all these different systems. Is this system is better than that system? It's about how the system is implemented and how it is utilized. Quaker also says, she said also that she has conflicting principles. I disagree. She has wants and desires. She defines under communitarianism that conflicts with actual principles. That's what it is. When you have people like Krystal and Sagar and Kyle who get on here and on these large platforms and like, well, I'm confused about my views here. It shows that these people are not serious about these viewpoints and weren't serious about them. Because if you can change this fast on the first doubt that you have, everything else you've been able to, well, I don't trust this, and here's why. Now you're not looking and not questioning anything, and all of a sudden you're just following the narrative.
Yep.
I have to question why what is going on with them to not at least even try to look at another point of view on this.
There's no difference between this and CNN. I mean, there's some difference, yes.
The style is the only difference.
That is the only difference. The same viewpoint is here than as is on CNN and MSNBC.
Yeah, throw in a couple of curse words, make it edgy, yell a little bit, every now and then make some rants vaguely about the CEOs and oligarchs.
It's like never, a less funny
ever having the nerve to mention their names.
It's like a less. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. I was going to say it's like a less funny Daily Show.
Yeah, I mean, what I hear from them is, and I started noticing this with Bernie. Bernie, he'll call out a handful of billionaires.
Oh yeah,
knowing that these are not the only people who are fucking everything up. And people like Kyle know this also. All of these people know the people who are really causing a lot of this freaking havoc, and they're scared to mention their names. But that's a whole nother subject. Let's get back to Krystal's double talking, confusion of self. I would say confusion of faces, because right now they're proving that they don't even know what the hell they believe in. So why are you all listening to people who don't even know what the hell they believe in? They're literally having tons of people they're having tons of people who are researching all this information, or maybe not researching, but bringing them all this information hand-fed for them. They literally get paid that this is what they have to do. And they can't figure out and be solid on their principles. The moment that the government starts pushing, and here's the thing, are we supposed to be so-called as leftists concerned about, authoritarian governments? I get that, yes, the left loves big government and loves, some of the programs and want government to run in a proper way. But at the same time, as a leftist, the biggest thing you have to always keep in the back of your mind because of your opponents have always used this tact and this fight against you, is authoritarianism. And there's no pushback to this authoritarianism right here. None.
It's insane.
None.
It's
If
like
we
a
were-
different world.
If this wasn't this topic, and this was, say, Manila, the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
their take would be very, very different. Let's get back to more of this confusion.
You're supposed to be like not only looking out for yourself, but looking out for them. You may be stationed in places around the world where people don't have access to the vaccine. So you're then, not only endangering yourself, but you're endangering people around you. In this country at this point, if you want to get a vaccine, you can get a vaccine. That is not the case in most places.
And that brings up something which I said earlier, which I wanted to bring back again. How many stories have you heard about active duty military troops in various countries all dying from COVID and having this outbreak, this massive outbreak of service members, whether vaccinated or unvaccinated? You hadn't heard it now. We weren't hearing it before the vaccination came out. So this team is building a straw man. It's giving excuses to an argument to back up a standpoint which you say you don't believe in, to give it validation for why you're going against your own principles now. That's how I see it. What do you think, Del?
I agree. It's like, I just said something. I forgot what I said. Shit. Yeah, the data. We don't have any data. Again, trust the science, but where is it? Where is it for this specific mandate? I don't see any. I don't see any data that led us to this decision. There's no data.
And I keep telling people, they've only been working on this for at max, 2 years? How are you going to tell me long-term side effects? How?
And you need 2 years, according to that article that I cited the other day in the Political Matrix. It said 2 years of trials to get FDA approval. What the fuck? Mm-hmm. And they're saying, like, even if it's not licensed in September, they're going to go forward with the mandate.
Yep.
Even if. That makes no sense. If whichever's longer, whichever happens first, is going to be the one. Like, you can't just make shit up. They just made shit up, and then
what they're doing. I mean, they're literally just throwing out hypotheticals, because that was literally just a hypothetical Krystal just came up with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no way she could confirm, deny that. That's just a way of throwing out fear in theory.
They was the government, by the way, not this. I was saying they as the government. Like Floyd Austin's guy came out and said, whichever comes first, the FDA approval of the vaccines or, the date, September, whatever the fuck. It's going to be September. They expect it to be September, but that's impossible because that's not enough time. But we live in an alternate universe, so that's okay.
Well, we live in a universe where money can make things happen.
Yeah, as it has in the past. Or why would Pfizer still exist?
And it still does every day.
The world. So you're endangering people who have no option to be able to protect themselves. So on the military, I do think it's clear, as we both pointed out, they're already required to get certain inoculations. Actually, there's an interesting piece in Time.
What's interesting about that, what she said, in most of the countries that we're stationed, like in active duty, and, fucking up countries, like invading them and stuff, like Syria, Iraq, all of that, they have a lower case rate and a lower death rate than way lower than the U.S. I just want to say that. Like, they're doing way better with COVID than we are. I just wanted to say that. They're not all like, oh my gosh, we're dying. They'll die. They're dying from other things, but, like Yemen. But they're all doing a lot better than the West with COVID. There's data to back that statement up. but nothing to back what she's saying up, of course.
Nope.
Go on. Sorry. Had to
No, you're good.
interject.
No, that was a good point to add.
That lays out a little bit of the history here. Apparently, George Washington in the Revolutionary War required all of the soldiers in the American Revolution to get the smallpox inoculation because smallpox was killing more of the troops than were dying in battle.
Right.
So this is literally there's a tradition and a grounding that goes.
What was that?
We can't have that.
Well, here's the thing. That was smallpox. This is not smallpox.
This is nothing near.
This is nothing near what I mean, we're literally talking about a time where the world was roughly, I want to say maybe, I don't even think we were over 1 billion population in the whole entire world. I don't think we were over 1 billion yet. Now, if you look at the death rate of smallpox at the time, I mean, these things are not like the black, like when they called it the black plague and the Black Death and stuff like that. These things they'll see a number like, oh, well, it only killed 200,000 people. Yeah, out of at the time, maybe 600,000 people. That's a lot. I mean, when it literally kills 30% of your people, that's what smallpox was killing, high amounts. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what, but I want to say smallpox
More than 1%.
was killing yeah. I mean, smallpox was killing what I remember, something like 10 to 15%, possibly more than that, possibly up to 25% of people it was killing. That's not comparing the same thing. So, I mean, and that, like I said earlier, you got to take these time periods, go back, compare what was the population of people at that time and what was that death rate at that time versus the death rate now with our almost 8 billion people.
Also, there was a whole lot of different practices of the hygiene was just not there compared to today. The hygiene is completely different. The people are completely different than today. So you can't really compare these two things. But that's the go-to, the MSM go-to that she's doing. Good job.
Yeah, go to one of the past pandemics or plagues and just compare the numbers without context. That's what you do. That's very good scholarship, as we would say. Being sarcastic, of course, is extremely piss poor.
We had slavery back then too. Are we going to say, oh, slavery's great? No, Krystal, we're not. I'm just saying things happened back in the past. They weren't all good.
Jesse has a good
comment. They didn't all help us.
I like this comment here. It says, wait, smallpox killing more soldiers than war. So is Krystal saying that this is the case now? She isn't saying it, but it is used to justify a completely different situation. And so, yeah, are we saying that, that this is literally like the Iraq War? That's what we're trying to use that. And what Jesse could be hinting to, which I believe, is that it's alluding to putting the angst of war and that stress and that pressure and that sadness, all those things that come with thinking about that, and the more trauma, that's the word I'm looking for, the more trauma of the deaths of war, and adding that trauma onto the narrative of COVID to add to a heightened sense of you need to do this. That's a good point, Jesse. Good point. Which that could be leaning towards that it's a little bit more pre-planned how she's being deceptive. All right, let's hear a little bit more.
Literally back to the founding of the country of requiring certain vaccinations and obviously certain medical status, certain physical fitness status of the troops. I think in line with that, this makes all the sense in the world. I also think on things like if you're a nurse in a nursing home, yeah, you've signed up for this job. Like your job is to care for people, to protect yourself, but to protect the people that are around you, especially if you're in that setting, then you're going to have a lot of people who
watch this. This is how clever they get with this little song and dance. Krystal's going to start saying some stuff which is a little bit more authoritarian. And then Kyle is going to come out after he's already kind of made a more a soft authoritarian pitch. And he's going to come and now try to be the voice of reason. That, whoa, wait a minute, hold on. Let's hold on a second before we get into all that. Watch, he comes in to try to play, the good cop all of a sudden. When she goes into the bad cop portion, in which he was playing. And so he did his bad cop towards the end, and then she starts in with her good cop. And then when she goes to bad cop, nice little switch.
Are probably more vulnerable, where even if they are vaccinated, they may have those rare instances of the breakthrough cases that can ultimately be serious, or they may be in a position where they're compromised enough where it's risky for them even to get the vaccine. And there were some questions about that. So in those cases as well, when you start to get into just like, I'm a big giant corporation and I want to force my workers back into the office, and so I'm going to mandate this. Then I start to get like, I don't know if I'm down with that. I don't know if I'm comfortable with handing that sort of increasing power, not just to the government, but to these HR departments. So I continue to be kind of split in case by case basis on these things.
Yeah. So let me interject, because I feel like you are sort of flipping on that principle though. Because if you're saying, well, for the nursing home, you can be forced to take it, and for the military you can be forced to take it, well, then that is sort of the same thing in principle, saying whatever company you work for should be able to force you to take it. It's like to say only specific companies can force them because those are higher risk. I get it, but it's still the same thing in principle. That, you know what I mean? So you're even more split than I am on this, it sounds like, because I think the largely middle path that we've taken is the correct middle path. But let me just give everybody the biggest
I wanted to freeze that because you see how he zipped that by and went up to the next point? Did you hear that also?
Stupid as shit.
Did you hear what he said?
What he's not supposed to say.
How we come to the middle path, the right path, and then skip. Let's jump back. Let's hear that.
Yeah,
again.
but he was like
coming back to in my own mind, because those are higher risk. I get it, but it's still the same thing in principle. That, you know what I mean? So you're even more split than I am on this, it sounds like, because
look at that. Listen
I
to
think
that.
the largely middle path that we've taken is the correct middle path. But let me just give everybody
the correct middle path.
Biggest things I keep coming back to in my own mind that are the most damning points on both sides of this.
Yeah.
So you already have mandatory vaccines for like measles and smallpox and polio and a bunch of other things.
So over it.
Yes, we already do, but those are all things which have years and years of clinical trials, and it is already FDA approved. That is not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all.
He said what he was
doing. I would like to hope that he's intelligent enough to know that. But if he's not intelligent enough to know that, I never mind. I guess it's just white privilege that he's able to be on a platform and doesn't know those kind of things.
Did you hear when he said that, like, he basically said what he was supposed to be doing instead of saying, where he's like, you're even, on this, you're even worse on this time. Like, he's saying what he's doing at that time. And he's going to do that right afterwards. And he's like, well, now I'm going in. Like, they're so fake. It's insane. It's the biggest play. Continue.
For the military, right? So they already have those mandatory vaccines, and the people who are flipping out over mandating the COVID vaccine, they haven't said anything about like, well, you should also stop making us take the measles and the smallpox and polio one. So it's like, your issue's only with the COVID one, or are you actually like against vaccines across the board? So that's weird to me. I feel like if we already have it for the,
you see how he flipped that, and I recommend you all to go and actually look at this video. Please thumbs down this shit. They already have 854 thumbs down out of 1,800 likes. So they need a couple more thumbs down on this shit.
Yeah.
But anyway, he still keeps going to this point of, oh, well, what, just are you on all vaccinations? Creating a straw man. He knows that this is emergency FDA approval. That is not the same as any of these other vaccinations. And so what
And
he's
they
trying to do
haven't said a word about that yet.
he's trying to conflate people who have a problem with this vaccination and anti-vaxxers as a whole so that he can delegitimize anybody who is against getting the vaccination.
Which is exactly what the mainstream media does every day.
Exactly. He's conflating to confuse.
Other ones, is it really that crazy to just add another one to the list? And also,
Yes.
I would say, guys, there's a reason why Donald Trump got this shit ASAP. There's a reason why Joe Biden got it. There's a reason why the elites lined up down the block immediately to get it. And there's a reason why the rather poor countries, as terrible as...
Oh, just in case you guys didn't hear me over that, I want to make sure to say that again. How the hell do you know exactly what the hell Donald Trump got? You do not know.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. You aren't there. You didn't administer. You didn't see what went into a syringe. You didn't see any of that. So you can't make an assertion with Donald Trump got it. I know we make these assertions all the time, but we need to start being a little bit more critical and say, well, hey, I don't know. Because we don't know. There's a lot of nonsense which is always going on. And sometimes some of this stuff is song and dance. That's all I'm telling you. I'm not saying on what specific issues. I'm saying sometimes there's a lot of theater going on. I mean, look at what just happened at the Capitol with them sleeping outside or supposedly sleeping outside, which I think it was Kyle I even heard who was making a big deal about people who were criticizing Cori Bush. Oh no, it was Anna. Sorry. Another one of the knuckleheads. I guess because he's from the TYT stock also. They all think the same. But I guess we'll go back into it. Yeah. Oh, what Anna was saying is, oh, yeah, she slept out there all night and this and that. And you got people like Franco from Franklin Analysis having the nerve to come up to her. Who does he think he is? And it's like, really? The biggest grifters in independent media by far is TYT. And you have the nerve to criticize anybody. They've had so much money to do so many different things and organize so much and have gotten Dickie McGee's acts done, as Kyle would say. And then Kyle gets the Justice Democrats going, whereas the Justice Democrats, what have they actually gotten done? Not a damn thing. So at a certain time, because I used to be a Secular Talk listener. I used to listen to him all the time, almost every video. And then I started to notice his content started to take a little bit of a change.
Yep.
And with all of these people, and you know what? I'll throw his name out there right now, Tim Black.
Thank you. I was going to say.
I watched him on a live stream earlier today, acting like he has lost his ever-loving mind.
He lost it long ago.
I'm looking at this dude and I'm sitting there like, since when did you become the official voice for all black people? Because that's how he spoke. I mean, but whatever. Tim Black, he do his own thing. We'll watch the people figure out who's there for the money and who's there for actually trying to get things accomplished. And who's there for trying to be buddies with Nina Turner and all that shit like that. And kissing ass to politicians. Because that's what you do, Tim Black. You kiss motherfucking ass.
How's it taste?
True. The poor countries haven't really had access to it yet.
That's right.
So there's a direct correlation here between people who are well off and can get it end up getting it, and they do that because it works. But I digress from that point. The fact that it's already mandatory for certain things leads me to think, is this really that much different? But on the flip side of it, the Tuskegee experiments.
I know.
And Osama bin Laden, when they went to get Osama bin Laden, the U.S. set up, I don't know if it was the CIA or the U.S. military, but they set up a fake vaccination program. And now the vaccine hesitancy in Pakistan is through the roof because they know, hey, last time they said we were getting vaccines, it was just this fake,
ploy to try to
get Osama bin Laden. So they were lied to, and it undermined public health. So again, the institutions have abused their power a million times. You shouldn't trust them. I can't say it enough. You should be not just skeptical, but cynical about these people. Well, so on the one hand, they shouldn't do it. But then on the other hand, it's like, this is an instance where it would work and it would help you. Yeah. So it's hard. Yeah.
Wait, let me cut in there. For Kyle.
And it's very real.
Yeah.
Can I give a fact check to Kyle? okay, he says it works and everything, and I guess it's still safe and effective for some people. But I read the latest, and again, this is the system that they wanted to use for the anthrax vaccination thing that they were saying in that article that I just read a while ago. VAERS, CDC's VAERS system, as of July 30th, 2021, logged in is 12,366 deaths, which is funny because that was the amount before, but then it was double what they put, and they took that number back and made it 6,000 something like a couple of weeks ago, which was super shady. CDC like covered up some numbers. They made a mistake, an error or something, a clerical error. But now it's actually at over 12,000 reported deaths from the vaccines. So you cannot look at that data and say that this is a safe and it works. This whole vaccine, all the vaccines work. You just can't say that and be correct. You have to look at data. We have to have some data, Kyle. Give us data, Kyle. I want data. You're a news network.
Well, just got up, take it down on this stream.
Well, you know.
Wow.
Huh?
I was like, well, you know, it is what it is. We got to have data.
I know, but even reading what's from the CDC information, they still find a way to have a problem with that when it happens to go against the narrative. I'm fine with, I want the truth, whatever the damn truth is. Not about hiding shit or overhyping this or underhyping anything. Let's just know all the facts and let everybody be able to be adults and make their own decisions. That's all I want.
The media has only focused on basically like white Republicans, usually men, young men who don't want to get vaccinated. If you look by race, the people who are most hesitant are actually Black Americans.
I wonder why.
And so, right. And so some of the neighborhoods that have the lowest vaccination.
You wonder why. And it's not even about vaccination. That's what people like. A lot of these people, they always go straight to Tuskegee. You got to think about it. We've dealt with redlining. We've dealt with segregation. We dealt with 40 acres and a mule, we were supposed to get, which we never got. Over 20 of our cities, as we built up after getting nothing, were completely burned to the ground. We deal with racist statues everywhere we go, and our history books completely tint it in an extremely racist way. We're not taught anything about most of the positive things done in history from so-called African Americans, unless it's the ones who were the good ones. We get to hear about George Washington Carver because he was a scientist. We get to hear about Martin Luther King, some of what he says. We get to hear about Malcolm X at the end of his life. But we don't hear about a Marcus Garvey. We don't really even learn about the stuff that was going on with Nelson Mandela. We don't hear about the Haitian slave revolt. We don't learn about so many things. So many schools don't teach about Mexican repatriation. They don't teach about the Indian boarding schools. There's so much of history that is not taught. And when America's approach, and especially the whole right wing of America, their approach has been pull yourself up by your bootstraps. When literally I go back to not that long ago, even my mother is 60 years old, and she was still going through desegregation into her high school. A lot of these problems, I mean, I can go back not that long ago. My grandparents were sharecroppers, and children directly right after Tulsa, Greenville, Oklahoma. They grew up in the town a little bit away from it called Sepulpa. I mean, I have ancestors who went through the Trail of Tears and know about the 400 contracts that this country has broken with the natives. We also know about how the CIA has no problem infiltrating drugs into our communities. We also know about how the coups that you see, Iran-Contra, we know about what the government has done. It is not just about some fucking Tuskegee. It is about a government which is shown to be distrustful in almost every sense. And then, on top of just being distrustful in general, it is specifically ignored one of the groups of people which it has done the most harm to. Both parties, Republicans or Democrats, left or right. That's the reason why Martin Luther King said he feels like the biggest stumbling block for the Negro is not the Ku Klux Klaner. It is the white liberal, because the white liberal kills us with this incrementalism. And what happens is we always have to just hope for just a little inch forward, and then one day your kids, it's finally going to be good for them. That's what the Democratic Party offers us, and the Republican Party offers us, fuck you. And you're telling us now, after we watch all of these scandals that go on with all of these corporations, all of the lying that they've done, all of the dishonesty which goes on, and you tell us, I don't get why blacks, Latinos have a high percentage of them don't trust this or don't trust the government or these companies. You can bring out Juvenile to do stupid ass songs, vax that thing up. You can have Mariah Carey on there acting all scared to take her shot. You can bring out any of these jackasses. Beyonce, Jay-Z, Kanye, we don't care. We don't trust you. That's the fucking problem. You are the problem.
Yes.
Sorry about that, El. Got a little worked up, but I figure there's a little bit more. Let's hear what they have to say.
Oh, yes, please.
Rates are actually overwhelmingly minority urban neighborhoods, exactly because of Tuskegee and, a million other instances of racism and bad interactions with the American healthcare system. I also saw, and I think this is very relevant to this.
Not to mention, think about the police violence that we deal with, and we can't even get an anti-lynching bill. I mean, most people might not get this, but the George Floyd thing, you know how many black people were still kind of surprised that he even went to prison, even though he killed a man right there on camera? Because we do not feel like this country ever feels it's wrong in anything it does to us. So why would there be trust? There's not trust. And why do you think that you see, people putting up a fist or taking a knee before the games? Because we know that this is a bifurcated society. And we know that we're on the wrong end of that stick. And yes, there are plenty of white liberals who do care. There are plenty of white people who do care and try to fight against this. But the problem is, most of the assholes at the top that are white, they don't care. And they want to keep things exactly the way they are. And so for them to treat us like that, and then to have a small percentage which is trying to make a difference, but can't because they're outnumbered by the ones who are fighting against us and the ones who are just, they could care less. There's so many reasons for us to have distrust. And now what's being pushed with this whole mandatory thing, which a lot of people don't think about, because I think she's going to allude to it, so I'll say my little piece. When you're going to start pushing most of these forcing or what Kyle says, well, kind of a happy medium, like a soft mandatory, when you start doing that, you're going to start forcing a lot of black and brown people out of employment and into homelessness. And so in your goal to push for this mandatory vaccination, keep in mind, you're about to do a huge, giant add to insult to the racism that we've felt in this country.
Conversation as well, that there's a significant chunk of people who aren't getting vaccinated because they're afraid that they're going to get charged, because every other interaction that they've had with the American healthcare system, even when they go in and it's like, oh, this is something I have to do and it's supposedly going to be free or I'm supposedly covered or whatever, and you come home with a gigantic bill. So again, in this instance, that's not correct. In this instance, even though even here, there have been some unscrupulous providers who have tried to charge people for the vaccine that should be free, but it is actually free. But you've got a sizable chunk that's like, I don't believe you, and I can't really blame them for that. So one other thing that should be...
That's cute how she focused a lot of it on people thinking about that, the pay thing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are some people out there, but I guarantee you that's not the major motivation for a lot of these people not doing it.
Into this conversation is like, mostly liberals are very confident in their position that there should be vaccine mandates. Everybody should be mandated to get a vaccine at your workplace, through the government, through the military, like wherever you are, you should be under a vaccine mandate. Just keep in mind that you are talking about a policy that will disproportionately impact Black and brown people. That is the reality of the numbers. And yes, ideologically, if you look, it is conservatives who tend to have the more hardline position on these things. And there are plenty.
And that's why they always talk about it from the conservatives, because they know liberals don't have a problem putting a mandate on conservatives. If they think about it, it's just conservatives. Well, when you tell them that it's a lot of Black and brown people that are going to mostly be affected by that, then it's going to make them, wait a minute. Should we be doing these mandatory? And so that's why they are hiding the ball on that part of the information. That's why there's no major stories. Yeah, they'll bring it up right here in a sentence. But let's see how often that this comes back around again, or let's see if anybody else even covers it. Which I know if they mention it in one sentence, it's not going to come up in no sentences and all the rest of them. That's even worse. I mean, they're even worse.
Like white Republican men who you know are happy to demonize, and you're totally comfortable forcing them to do whatever. But if you're talking about barring people from workplaces and restaurants and public venues based on vaccination status, you are talking.
And they bring and like to bring up what CNN had when they had Don Lemon on there. That's the reason why they have somebody like Don Lemon say it. Because they already know who most of the people are. So if you bring Don Lemon out there and say that he's Black and he's gay, yeah, try to attack Don Lemon on that statement. That's the reason why it only got a little Twitter buzz and most people left it alone, because they know you can't attack him because yeah, I mean, I guess he is a Black guy, so I guess he knows. It's a game. It's a game, people.
Out a policy that disproportionately impacts Black and brown people. And I don't hear anyone in the media really wanting to address that, because it's much easier to hold the position if you're just talking about forcing a group of people that you don't like already. And that is essentially like foreign to most of your viewing or listening audience to do something.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the numbers are what they are, as you just laid out. But also, I mean, obviously, anecdotally, I know a zillion lefties who are just, because they're so anti-big pharma, for good reason, that makes them then skeptical of the vaccine, and so they don't want to take the vaccine, and that's a real phenomenon. And again, all I would say is both things can be true. And big pharma's some of the worst in the country, and they totally bought the government, and they want to keep those prices high, and they want to price gouge you. And there's been a million examples of the unscrupulous stuff, like they'll try to get things that get approved through the FDA, but come to find out the thing doesn't work, but they basically bought off the FDA. There's all that stuff that's totally real.
That shit right now with the boosters, trying to persuade them.
That's exactly right. They're
happening now.
To get the boosters.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
What was that?
And now that's the end, almost. Like that's where they end it, where it gets really interesting, and they can't really say anything because
that's the part they put behind the paywall.
That's hilarious.
That's what they do now on that show. Instead of doing all of their segments, they do a handful, and then it goes a good chunk of their show behind the paywall.
How TYT of them?
Oh yeah, well,
Members
so
only.
TYT of them. Well, I mean, this is just the new TYT, basically.
Honestly. And again, booster, very big.
Without the raunchiness. I guess it's TYT without the raunchiness.
Yeah. Little fuck here and there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they got away with, with the stuff they did as long as they did. I mean, I get it. If you were a younger 20-something guy getting into politics and your hormones are raging, yeah, you might not care that they throw in a lot of stuff which sexualizes women, and and I would say is very disrespectful. Yeah, you might not care about that when you're younger, but as I started getting a little bit older, seeing some of this stuff, it started getting more and more cringe and harder to watch. And then their coverage also echoed getting worse and worse on top of it. So, yeah, I stopped watching TYT a good while ago. But I guess
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Where they ended it is so interesting.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, that's what they do on all of those little segments like that. They always end it on a point where it's like, whoa, what are you about to say? I
know you heard everything I said, and none of it made sense. I know what I said made no sense to you, but trust me, I know what I'm talking about. But I don't know what I'm talking about. Basically, is what I got.
Yeah, that's what they say. They say, yeah, I know I don't know what I'm. They basically to effect say, yes, don't trust me at the end.
Yeah. Could we have
our
check now?
I don't know what I'm talking about. And so what I call that is, that's like they know this is kind of a choreographed BS game, and this is their kind of out. So they can always tell their friend, hey, man, I was trying to tell you guys here that I was really,
I was middle path.
Yeah, this was my distress call that I was given. Tell you guys really a wink and a nod. I'm just doing this for the check, but don't trust them. That's their little get out of jail free later on. Put those kind of things in there. But Elle, I was wondering, did you have anything you wanted to plug before we get out of here?
Oh yeah, just my usual podcast, superawkwardfuncast.podbean.com. Last episode is up, and it's a doozy of one. I forgot what it was called, so let me see what it's called. Oh yeah, Pandemic of the Vaccinated. See, I did that before anyone else did it. I did it before it was cool. So yeah, it's called Pandemic of the Vaccinated. It's from July 27th. And it's every month that I do this shit. And you should just tune in for facts. I do a lot of source work. I research shit, and I put the sources in there. It takes a long fucking time, but I do it. And if you don't listen to the podcast, at least get some sources out of it and some information, because it's very important. And a lot of the things I'm talking about there, I talk about here, and in more detail there, and talk about the Event 201 exercise and everything. So you can look all of those documents up on my channel. If you want to look up the segment 4 that I discussed before, it is on YouTube still. There's no comments, of course, but Clayton X, you get comments last time I checked. So if you want to look up their exercise for 2018, which has some interesting bits about vaccines and technology, mRNA technology and stuff like that, PCR tests not working, you can go there. That's Clayton X on YouTube. Or you can look it up from the website Center for Health Security, or just look it up in search engine of your choice, not Google probably, but anything really works. And then you can get that information and just be, have everything in your arsenal to combat this bullshit. Oh, you're misinformation. Well, no, I'm not. Here's a source. Fuck you. You can't get rid of me. Nobody's getting rid of me on Twitter, I'll tell you that fucking much, because I source every fucking thing I say. And sometimes you just got to do that, whether you like it or not. Or I don't really post videos or repost videos because I don't know the context. If I don't know the context, I comment on things, but I will not promote things as if they are true. And even when I comment, I usually leave out the video just for my own sanity.
See, that's why I do it. That way she can comment on the videos, and then I can take the heat. So if it's wrong, I'll let it fall on me.
like protests and stuff. You don't know what year some of the shit's from. They just lie a lot about protests, like
yeah,
especially
stuff like that.
farmer protests, that sort of shit, like random protests that they just put in the algorithm. That you're like, wait a minute, I don't know about that.
And I mean, even though there are, I mean, of course, there are real protests in Israel, Israel-Palestine situation. There are fake ones too. I've seen actual fake ones. And what I mean by fake ones is like literally they had a whole green screen with like a giant background, and you can't, like, they're throwing rocks at nothing. So I mean, I know that happens somewhat. Sometimes I think it's used as propaganda so that they can do some of these attacks, but we can always hash that out another time.
That's a big show.
Yeah, that is a big show. That is complicated because it is not just a black and white issue. There's so many shades of gray. And with all these things, I want everybody to always keep in mind everything is very nuanced. So we gotta keep that in mind and just not jump to quick, assumptions, kind of like Kyle and Krystal were doing. They're playing checkers when this is Bobby Fischer level chess. So I guess I'll eventually, hopefully, I will get myself together and have a couple of videos coming out on my other channel, Hebrew Apologetics. I've been hearing some interesting conversations and some Discord servers, so don't be surprised if another debate might not be around the corner. And make sure to catch us. And for those who do not know, Elle, who joined me tonight, is one of my very, very, very intelligent and hardworking co-hosts on the Political Matrix. Make sure, like she said before, catch her show, Super Awkward Funcast on Podbean. So make sure to do that, and on YouTube also. I think she's on YouTube too. So follow that also, and make sure to follow our Twitters too.
Yes, Twitter.
Yes, definitely. And you can find all of my channels. Just once you find my Twitter, I literally have the channel linked in my description. So that said, this has been What I've Been Thinking with Young Morpheus and L. Latham. You all have a great evening. And tomorrow I might be creeping into another content creators stream. So look to catch me possibly on Red Economics. So watch out for that, and you all have a good one. I will talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.